I believe it has been over 2 years since I've made a video on the Mirage F1C, and this thing is currently on sale for 50% off in the Gaijin store. Use my link in the description down below if you want to buy anything. I would really appreciate that because it helps me out a lot. Nonetheless, I did recommend this thing in my sales buying guide, and that's kind of quite the opposite of what I would have recommended in my last Mirage F1C video so long ago, because this plane has changed a good bit since then, and it is actually a pretty damn consistent grinder, and I do recommend it. So I want to make an up-to-date video on how I would recommend grinding it if you do so choose to buy this thing. As many of you know, I am kind of just an air-to-air player. I don't do any PvE or base bombing or anything, but for the sake of the grinding spirit and playing premium planes, I recognize a lot of you like hitting these bases and ground targets to get some extra RP in before you go for air-to-air kills with your missiles. So what I would recommend doing if you are one of these people that like doing the air-to-ground stuff is take the rocket pods and don't take too much stuff. If you take too much stuff, you have too much drag, you're too heavy, the F4Ss might beat you to the base, or your other teammates that are also trying to get some bases, they will probably beat you to the base if you overload the plane. So I would recommend just taking 2 of the rocket pods like you see on screen, as I narrowly died to that AIM-9. Thankfully he shot that from too far because I was not paying attention. But by taking only 2 rocket pods, not only do you get the long range ability with the rockets so you can beat people with bombs to killing the base, which is huge, but it also means that you're not overloaded and you can actually out accelerate and beat the F4Ss in a straight line to the base. Unfortunately, there's only 4 bases, there's a lot of people trying to hit them, so it is a bit of a competition, and getting a little bit of base damage in is better than no base damage because you are too slow. So in summary, when it comes to the ground attack, don't overdo it, just try to get there first and get a little bit of damage in, maybe get an entire base destroyed, and then go straight into your air-to-air gameplay. And that's really what has changed and where this plane really shines as a grinder compared to when I would have last talked about it. That is because the Magic 2 alone has received so many buffs and has become such a strong missile, particularly at this 11.3 battle rating, that it is just such a consistent grinder and very, very easy to get a Magic 2 kill, or perhaps both of your Magic 2s a kill every single game. And that is exactly what you want when you're grinding out a tech tree, is you want the consistency. The Magic 2 has gate with IRCCM, and as far as ARB goes, it is probably the most flare resistant of the gate with IRCCM missiles. Yes, the R73 has the exact same flare resistance values as the Magic 2 as far as its gate with goes. However, the Magic 2 accelerates way faster and it closes the distance way sooner than the R73. Therefore making it harder to flare, because as these missiles get closer, the more difficult it is for them to see your flares. Now unfortunately, before I could get any of my missiles off, I was chased by an F4S and an F5C, and I was just flying away until one of them decided to break off. I was hoping it would be the F5C because I'd rather take the 1v1 with an F4S. Unfortunately, I had to take a 1v1 with an F5C, and he started on my 6, and that is not something you want as a Mirage F1C player, and so I do take critical tail damage, and I can't even control my tail anymore. However, I am probably the greatest pilot that has ever graced the game of War Thunder Air Realistic Battles, and I fly my plane back into combat with no tail control, using my air brake and my other flight controls to steer myself around. Fantastic speed management on my part, if I do say so myself. Like I said, just the greatest that has ever graced this game, and I'm gonna go ahead and get 2 kills with my Magic 2s when I should have died half of an hour ago. Thankfully, neither of these 2 planes saw my missiles coming, but even if they had, there's a good chance that if they didn't know how to flare it properly, they would have died anyways, just because Magic 2s are that strong. And it did feel pretty good saving the F104 there, but unfortunately he's going to die a little bit later. And that is very bad for the situation at hand, because I need to get the pressure and the attention away from me. I have no tail control. I'm going to try to land this thing, and I can't do that if people are going to be chasing me down. So we're going to pop the air brake out, slow down a little bit, and for some reason my air brake kind of acts like an elevator in this situation, and I'm able to just keep the elevators, well, the air brakes out, and use them as elevators as I roll around to keep myself in a straight line toward the airfield. When you don't have tail control, depending on what speed you're at, the plane naturally just wants to keep pitching up or pitch down, so that's why I'm rolling around so much, to kind of counteract where I'm actually pitching the nose to. And so all it takes is a simple lineup on the runway here, and again, I am the greatest pilot that has ever graced this game, so we put it down nice and easy. Use of flaps at last second to not come down too hard, but you can't put them out too early because then you're just going to pitch up with no tail control, and we get the thing on the ground. But as I skid to a stop, my heart sinks as an F4S has followed me all the way to my base just to come strafe me. However, My timer is not too long. I've only got 8 seconds to go. It's about now. I'm really wishing I had an aced crew. If I had an aced crew, I'd already be respawned and I could J out on the runway. And right when I hit 0 seconds, I die. If I'd have just been a second faster, I would have gotten invincibility there as my screen blacked out and I would have respawned and been back in the game. Very unfortunate ending to a rather fun little lucky match there. But now we can talk about the Mirage on a more serious note when it comes to the air-to-air stuff. You will note that you have Super 530F missiles, and these are the same as the Super 530D missiles, unlike the Mirage 2000 for example, except they have a much worse seeker in the missile. In fact, I really don't recommend these things. Maybe carry one of them on your plane like I am, because sometimes that's not going to stop people like that F-14 from just not paying any attention whatsoever, and they don't react to your missile launch at all, and sometimes in those cases it is a great missile to have. But one single pop of chaff can very often destroy the Super 530F's guidance. It doesn't have the continuous wave illumination like the other SAR missiles such as the AIM-7F have, so when people chaff your missile, it's very often just going to die. It is also important to note that the Mirage F1C has MTI radar mode, similar to something like the MiG-23 MLD. However, you can't actually track missiles using MTI. You can find targets with MTI, but when you lock them up, it's just going to be a normal pulse track on your radar. So how useful is that really? Well, I'll let you guys be the judge of that. Your final missile I'm going to talk about here is the 530E. This is an IR missile. It is very slow. It is rear aspect only. It's not that great either. However, the 530E is not going to give people radar warning receiver warnings like the Super 530F will, and both of them are going to pretty much die to a single countermeasure pop in most cases anyways. So personally, I would rather have the missile that isn't going to alert the enemy that I'm firing at them with it, because then they're just going to press their countermeasure key out of the sound cue rather than the potential of getting a stealth missile kill. And so in this case, I think the 530E is the superior missile, at least to take more of over the 530F. You may have a different opinion, that's perfectly fine, that's just what works best for me. So overall, you get two extremely consistent good missiles in the Magic 2s, you get some decent to bad missiles everywhere else, but at least you get 3 extra decent to bad missiles to complement your 2 very good ones, making it pretty easy again to get anywhere from like 1 to 3 kills in a pretty consistent manner, and that is exactly what you want for tech tree grinding. The RWR isn't super complicated, there's not a ton of information, however it gives you what you need. It lets you know if you're being locked onto with a little sound cue combined with at the bottom of the RWR it'll say pulse, and it also has a launch warning, which is a different, more obnoxious sound cue, and the CW light there at the bottom of it will be lit up when you're getting launched at. However, just like any RWR, the range band of the radar that's locking you has to actually be detectable by your specific RWR, otherwise you're not going to get any kind of warning for it. And it is also worth noting that this thing carries a very healthy amount of countermeasures, which is not all that common at the 11.3 battle rating. So having such a strong amount of countermeasures does make it a lot more ergonomic to play. It makes it a lot more noob friendly, some of them being large caliber countermeasures as well. Definitely helps if you are combating any kind of IRCCM missiles, but it's just nice having so many pops. Lastly, I do want to touch on the flight performance. The flight performance has been buffed since the long time ago when I made a video on this plane. It wasn't that strong of a flight model whatsoever. It is a lot better these days. Sure, you're still going to struggle against the strong dogfighters of the battle rating like the F5 or the J7E or the MiG-23 MLD. Stuff like that is still going to be an issue, and they're going to be annoying to fight against. However, against your typical 11.3, which is like an F4S or somebody bombing an F104, you can handle it, and the flight performance is good enough that you can make it work in most situations if you are better than the opponent. Even against the really strong dogfighting planes, unless they're starting on your 6 or something like that, it's not that difficult to come out on top as long as you're just better than them. The plane pulls some impressive AOA, it oftentimes is like pulling 12G for me, it doesn't lose speed extremely fast like it used to, and the flaps are pretty usable at high speeds as well without ripping, which does help in those high speed, high AOA situations when you're just trying to get your nose around first, which is going to come very handy later in this clip. You've probably noticed this F-15 buzzing around me. He's been kind of annoying all game just because he's not stupid, and that makes for a pretty annoying time if you're in the Mirage F1C. There's really not much I can do to kill him aside from getting right behind him and launching a Magic 2 and hoping that he can't flare it. And so when he's just buzzing in and out of combat zones like he is right now, try your best to just ignore them. If there is a blatantly superior plane that you can't really do anything with, do your best to ignore them. Obviously, don't die to them, stay vigilant, keep your situational awareness, keep track of where they are, but do your best to kill everyone else around them, and that way you can kind of take on this really powerful plane with your team as he's all by himself, kind of like we've done right now. It's now a 2v1 with me in this F-15. Unfortunately, my second teammate seems to be RTB, so this is about to turn into a 1v1, which is extremely not ideal for a Mirage F1C, obviously. He outclasses me in pretty much every metric as far as flight performance goes. One more saving grace of the Mirage F1C is that the engine is very fuel efficient even on full afterburner, so you don't need to take that much fuel. I pretty much only ever take 20 minutes, roughly 50%, and that lasts me for pretty much every game, all game. And having less fuel is very helpful in a situation like this, where you're already just so outclassed by the F-15 that you're going to need every single advantage possible just to get a 50-50 situation, and that's what I'm going to have to settle for here. I hesitate on dropping my speed just because I want to see what he does first, but now that he's committed to this one circle turn fight, it's all about who can get their nose on first, and while he does turn tighter than me, if I can slow down faster and use these high-speed combat flaps and takeoff flaps, I can pull my nose in somewhat close to his, and we get a 50-50 trade situation there. I should have probably died first, honestly, but that offset gun on the F-15 I think threw him off a little bit, and I'm able to kill him without even taking any damage. Best case scenario right there. In a down tier, the flight model is good. At your own battle rating, it's just kind of average, and then of course you're just straight up outclassed against an F-15. So overall, I think this plane is a great grinder, largely in part because of the Magic 2s and the consistency of them, along with the backup missiles and its ground strike ability. That's going to be it for me. I'll see you later.